everyone! Rudy Ray Moore, the underground legend whose explosive persona, Dolemite, reshaped the landscape of black entertainment, may be remembered by many as a flamboyant comedian, a B-movie superstar, and the godfather of hip-hop. But there is another side to his story that Hollywood rarely likes to acknowledge. A side that reveals why insiders quietly whispered that he was one of the most dangerous actors to ever walk through the industry. Dangerous not because he was violent, but because he threatened the entire system by daring to show the world a type of black power, black masculinity, and unfiltered creativity that Hollywood never wanted to support, sanitize, or control. And to understand why Rudy Ray Moore became such a disruptive force, you have to go all the way back to the early years when he struggled as a broke young man bouncing between odd jobs, scraping pennies to survive, all while dreaming of performing on a stage so big that the whole world would hear him. And it was during this time that he began listening to the raw street rhyming of old men on sidewalks and in back alley barbershops, rhymes sharp enough to slice, vulgar enough to shock, and rhythmic enough to hypnotize. And Rudy realized he could turn that street poetry into a weapon, a comedic revolution that rejected Hollywood's stereotypes, reclaiming black identity on his own terms. So he crafted the character Dolemite, a supernatural pimp-poet-warrior whose swagger, sharp tongue, and impossible martial arts feats became the embodiment of resistance. And suddenly, Rudy Ray Moore was no longer a struggling entertainer. He was now the leader of a movement the establishment did not want, because his art wasn't built for white studio executives or clean corporate branding. It was built for the streets, for the unseen, for the overlooked, and for black audiences hungry to see themselves portrayed as powerful and untouchable. And this terrified Hollywood, who realized quickly that Rudy was not interested in obeying rules, censoring himself, or bending his knee to the system because he bankrolled Dolemite on his own, cast who he wanted, hired black crews when studios refused to, and created an entirely independent film phenomenon that made millions without studio approval, something truly dangerous because it proved that black films could succeed without Hollywood's involvement. And when Dolemite blew up, Rudy became a hero to those who felt ignored, but a threat to corporate gatekeepers who feared the rise of independent black cinema gaining power. And while critics mocked him, Rudy didn't stop. He made more films: The Human Tornado, Petey Wheatstraw, Disco Godfather, each as wild, fearless, and unapologetically black as the last. And with each release he pushed boundaries further, calling out racism, police brutality, corruption, exploitation, and censorship long before mainstream media had the courage to touch those subjects, which only amplified the perception that Rudy Ray Moore was dangerous, because he was exposing truths the powerful wanted hidden, giving voice to struggles Hollywood refused to acknowledge, and inspiring a generation of artists, including rappers like Snoop Dogg, Ice-T, Ice Cube, Eazy-E, and Too Short, to speak boldly without permission, turning Rudy into the spiritual grandfather of hip-hop, a cultural architect whose legacy shaped the beats, flows, and bravado of rap long before the genre took over the world. But behind that unstoppable personality was a man who endured betrayal, financial hardships, industry sabotage, and decades of rejection, with studios shutting doors on him, distributors refusing his films, and mainstream critics mocking him endlessly. Yet Rudy kept pushing, selling his records out of car trunks, renting theaters himself, and traveling city to city promoting his movies like a one-man empire. And it was this relentless, self-made warrior spirit that made him so dangerous in Hollywood's eyes. Because Rudy Ray Moore proved that you didn't need a corporation to succeed, you didn't need permission to create, you didn't need validation to matter. And in an era where black artists were controlled, boxed in, and silenced, Rudy broke every chain placed on him, refusing to exist in the role Hollywood assigned him. And this terrified gatekeepers who relied on those chains to maintain power. And although Rudy's fame faded over the years, his influence only grew stronger beneath the surface, shaping comedy, rap, film, and black culture in ways that few artists ever achieve. And by the time Eddie Murphy revived his story in Dolemite finally realized what Rudy had always been. Not just a comedian, not just a hustler, but a revolutionary who weaponized creativity, humor, and fearlessness to crack open doors. Hollywood tried desperately to keep shut, And that is why insiders once called Rudy Ray Moore the most dangerous man in Hollywood, because he fought the system and won, because he proved independence was possible, because he inspired countless artists to take control of their voices, and because even today, long after his passing, Rudy Ray Moore remains a reminder that one brave man with a microphone, a vision, and an unbreakable will can shake an entire industry from the ground up, leaving behind a legacy that echoes louder than any studio machine could ever silence. Thanks for watching.